Alright, 당은도 당은 저기 미다 심제 수인에 당은 저야 레다 뇽모 왕기 안나 라와메바 당봉은 저기 레다 뇽모 왕기 아니 코발이야 개발이야 개 얘네 가슴질이야 레다 뇽모베 라와메바니 시로거레스 근데 다치와디야 안 레다 뇽모 왕기 안 데레 바도세 두거레스 제상은 저기 레다 뇽모 왕기 내 레다 뇽모 라와메바치 안 레다 뇽모 왕기 안에 된 바도가 두 바도 뒤레스 제상 기시 바도 숨 세상을 줄이야 뒤에디 바레스 나 디네기 당아 저기 동아 영화디 다 레다 뇽모 깨와 렘바자 디 용구여 바자다 당아 저기 레다 뇽모 깨와디레 탈고 거래 레다 뇽모 왕기 라오메 치와디레 탈고 거래스 제사디 안타야디 가르쳐 거래스네 디네기 영화 저 레다 뇽모 왕기 깨요 시와 바도 숨디 안에 야 산지 구숨 용어 주고래 해지래 산지 구숨고 구숨 내가서 롱고다 아까서 최고다 롱고 주구숨 용어 주고래서 최고다 롱고 주구숨 용어 주고래서 아주래 레나 녀면 깨와다 치와다 바로서 숨요로와 대숨보디 안다 가르쳐 그랬으네 산지 구숨 용어 줄토바 제고 그래 해지래 산주 구숨대 가래라는 최고다 롱고 주구숨 용어 주고래 제리
Good evening. All of us, we take rebirth within samsara, and we do so due to our karma and afflictions. So we are born in samsara under the power, under the control of our own karma and afflictions. And without any freedom, our life will end and we will die. This is a situation we have no control over. And following death, immediately we are born in the intermediate state. So there's this process of birth, death, and then moving into the intermediate state, from where again we are born in a body, we will eventually die, and again move to the intermediate state. We need to gain freedom from this process over which we are powerless, this process of taking uncontrolled rebirth, then death, and then moving into the intermediate state, or the bardo, due to our contaminated karma and afflictions. And the way to do this most skillfully is to take these into the path, transforming their very essence. Take birth, death, and the intermediate state. Take those three into the path, transforming them into the three bodies of a Buddha, or the three kayas of a Buddha. And these are the wisdom body, and the emanation body, and the enjoyment body, or in Sanskrit, the Dharmakaya, Rupakaya, and Namanakaya.
당아 저기 레다 뇽모 옹이 치워디 다디 람 곰비 톱기 치워디 마음받는 레다 뇽모 치워디 잡라 안 최고고 줄도 봐죠. 최고고 줄이야다. 다 되네 나 저기 시내 가르치고 저 가르치고서는 바돌기고로와 제산 바돌기 계획에 잡들라 니 되라는 가르치고서는 롱고고 줄이야. 되네 바돌이 양계 깨워지는 거로 깨워는 거로 기시 깨워는 디 깨워게 잡라 안 죽이고 줄이야지 도스교고 그래서 다 줄투 봐죠. 안디 간스 규고래서는 남곰베도 규고 그래. 줄투고 그래. 남곰베도 규고 그래. 디 줄투고 그래. 제로하다. 다 남곰베도 규고사 데라 양한 저기 뇌감에 셔봐 있나? 다 장주샘 장주샘이 심비 토네 안에 팔신주고 냠내지 동반이 또 베셔라 공부할 때네 아니 뇽모바 지바 바차다 제바 빵용도 하나 저기 구스명고 규고래 제다 다디 아주 뒤에 가서 해야 되래.
This process of the three, birth, death, and intermediate state, that we are subjected to without any control, we need to transform those three into the three kayas, or three bodies of a Buddha. So the essence of death death which comes under the control currently of our karma and afflictions, we need to transform that into the essence of the Dharmakaya, with wisdom body. We need to transform the essence of moving into the intermediate state into the Sambhogakaya, or the enjoyment body. And the essence of birth needs to be transformed into the Namanakaya, or the emanation body. So this is the technique that's utilized in Tantra. In the sutra paths, there rather one generates bodhicitta and then practices the 6 perfections of ethical restraint, generosity, patience, joy, perseverance, concentration, and wisdom. And in this way, the combination of bodhicitta and the 6 perfections, one abandons completely the afflictions together with their seeds and imprints, and in that way attains those same 3 kayas.
Onda ding anzo due kapne nyamlen che pala tene ngazo kishi parto su leda nyomo unge kiawa shiwa parto tubyo sumdi sanji kusum ngo yurta di je. Da de ngazo Lama Chöpa ka so she de kar sungora sine chesna da de ngazo ge leda nyomo kiawa da chiwa da ane parto sumbo di sanji kusum ngo yura kanes yugore lamna da lam kirim da zorim gombale tene ane yugore saje da dosine.
The trainings in the Sutra path then are to cultivate bodhicitta, engage in the 6 perfections, and thereby attain Buddhahood and attain the bodies of the bodies of a Buddha, the kayas of a Buddha. And in this way, one abandons birth, death, and the intermediate state that comes about independent or under the control of the afflictions. Whereas in Tantra, the system is quite different. There one transforms the very essence of birth, death, and an intermediate state into the 3 kayas. And the method for doing so is what we've looked at in the last couple of weeks, the generation stage and the completion stage. Those are the 2 stages of the fourth class of Tantra, of highest yoga Tantra.
Dine zada ngazo dangbo se dangbo di gerim nyamlen che ten gerim nyamlen kala kansam chik nipa tyo de dine zorim nyamlen che gore se da zorim nyamlen che ge zorim nyamlen rimba dila ngazo ge china lu gasore rimba jukshe da nga she da dine ngore ina donda chibare donda cha sandu ge ne lumba jukshe ba na ngazo ge nambo luwe ngawen semen gulu wesa sonjuk sedi andos chen rimba to di nyamlen che che di tablam di res di nyamlen che pala tene ananga ju leda nyomo ong kishi pardo sumbodi sanji kusum yongo ya ndurtu gore je de na kesin di goranga su shi sabare da.
Of the 2 levels, generation stage necessarily is practice first. When one becomes sufficiently skilled and one's practice strong enough within the generation stage, one embarks on training in the 2nd level, that of the completion stage. And the completion stage itself has 5 or 6 levels, just depending on whether the first 2 are combined or not. And so if we look at the division into 6, as we did in a little bit of detail last week, the first is that of physical isolation, the 2nd is that of verbal isolation, the 3rd, mental isolation, the 4th, clear light, the 5th, the illusory body, and the 6th, that of union. And it's through training in first the generation and then the completion stages that one transforms the essence of death, the intermediate state, and rebirth into the 3 bodies of a Buddha, or the 3 kayas of a Buddha.
Da din man dirin shue de da tsikte da lamna masin chiwi duje na zandap changya lammi phowa ne tongwa ya da jebe damga ge da be shin do zhoba jin yu lo sa shi.
They come to the 112th verse. So that in the booklets is on page 19. Please bless me to reach a pure land through the points of the path should the points of the path not be completed at death, by either the forceful means of enlightenment, the Guru's mind transference, or by the advice on applying the 5 forces.
Then lamna masin se de lamna masin se de ngazu chetelia Chiki lam nyamle, chiki nyamle ki chuelia, lobchung che, nyamle chebi inea, tsedelia, manzo lam gyula ki matuba dila, ki matuba ina, lamna ma simba si gore. Lam gyula ki tuba na lamna simba re. Chisanga zu nyamle che na, an nyamle che, nyamle chebi chue, nyam chue che, tene, nga zuki nyamle chebi ina, lam gyula ki matuba na lamna ma simba si gore. Chene lamna ma sinsi. Chiwi duje na, sirida, denegi, ane lam nyamlen che lam gyula ki matubi tini shiyegi kensam leyato da kana sam tangu kure sido da delia sam den tangu kure se shor lam namasin chiwi duje na sido da sedelia che nyamlen che ina lam tobo gyula ki matuba che ane shiro che do anu skare se kure se na ane ma do sungor da kana se kure se aje.
Just before I come to Kenna's commentary, as we go through this, the second and third line of the Tibetan, I will need to just change the translation later. But now, the first line in Tibetan, which for us is the second, should the point of the path not be completed at death. So here, perhaps instead of saying, should the point of the path not be completed, it would be better to translate as, should the point of the path not have arisen in my mind at the time of death. With the meaning being, when the time of death comes, if I have not obtained a path, how should I think? How should I think? How should I practice at the time of death? Should I not have achieved a path? So perhaps a better way to translate the first line: should the point of the path not have arisen at the time of death?
Bendigo nyamlin je nga je pedya nga de she nye she ba na jin kirim na zorim se nyamlin je ya to ba gyule ki ma to ba na ani shiro che de ne gar che gore se da andi men bi ge da de ne ge samma da na nga jo ge chue nyamlin je na ni shiro che de ne de ne lam gyule ki ma to shiro che na gar che gore la de an de le ya da de le zandap chang ge la mi pho wa ni se de da 아주 잔답 기고네 잔답을 배 왕슈 겹제 가소래 우주 겹슈 겹제 ene nga sangi bege sangi goban töbege goban töbe 탑제고 goban töbe 탑람디 베수 제고래 해서 그러다 베수 제고래 해서야 돼. 다 잔답세데 전 슉세 배는 하나 저기 개갑지기 나라야 이제 그 개합 현대기 왕슈 베제 단제 주주변의 전주제발로 전주제바는 그 용 마초배나 편이기 왕슈 베제단 주 레반의 전주제발로 니나시 아주 람귤에 깨요 말때 이나다 되네게 갑려야 마신일에 시로집에 마신일이야 배치 잔답제 왕슈도 안에 냠는 제제 배주다 된다 배주 친부직 시우지 배주 냠는 제제 안에 양의 상기가 고바 톱토가 제고래 해야지. 상기 전답参加, 전답 창자, 전답세리, 전답 유관에 안 가르쳐 상자고래, 상자와 개토바 제고래 해야지.
So understanding then the first line is, should the point of the path not have should the point of the path not have been attained at death, with the meaning of that being, should I not have attained a path at the time of death? And in this context of highest yoga tantra, should my training in the generation and completion stage not be successful or not be completed? Not completed. Should I have not attained results from my training in the two stages? How should I think in order? Now we'll move into the second line of the Tibetan, in order to attain enlightenment. So here, just as an alternative translation, we could say something like, please bless me to reach a pure land. So that's the first line. Should the point of the path not be attained at death, the second line. And then the last two, through perfectly applying the Lama's spiritual instructions on the five forces. And the third, that's the third. And then the fourth line, the transference of consciousness. This forceful means to attain enlightenment. So I'll say this again as Gena goes through it. He's now commenting on this part. The transference of consciousness, the forceful means to attain enlightenment. So this term forceful means, this is in other contexts we would use a word such as coercion. So it's a very strong word, and we can think of where one country tries to coerce or dominate another country. So it's a very strong word. So if one has not attained a path at the time of death, how should one think? How can one coerce, or what forceful means can one apply in order to attain enlightenment? So again, the final line in the verse, the transference of consciousness, the forceful means to attain enlightenment.
Zendab Jukone Sangyawa Jiwa, Sangya Duba Jiwa said, and that Zendab Jukone and Jawachima, Dashin the Kituba Jiwa said, Zendab Jukone, Jawachima, and Dendruli Kituba Jiwa said, Nadusine and Yungor, whether dinner Zendab Sangya said, Zendab Yun, Sangyawa Jitua Jiwa Sunwa, then the Shula and Dashin the Kiwa Jituba, that Sangyamatu and Dashin the Kitua, Dashin Gimon and Jawachima Hada meeting and Den Chabachin Gituyagi on the neck tone and the negative Toba Jiwa, then Toba and Ansola Kigo Mara, Ansola Kiwa Kagorba.
What Gen is commenting on is this last line, the transference of consciousness, the forceful means to attain enlightenment. So what is this forceful means? So this is he'll come to explain, but it says then to attain enlightenment. But we should understand that if the goal is enlightenment, but that may not be attained at our time of death, but we will practice in this way, and if we don't manage to achieve enlightenment, perhaps we will attain rebirth in a Pure Land, otherwise a good rebirth in the upper realms as a human. So this then is to be understood, whilst the line explicitly says the forceful means to attain enlightenment, to understand that to attain enlightenment can also mean either rebirth in a Pure Land or in a happier migration, such as a human.
Denegi Changya and the Zanapsu Changya Tubeda, Denegi Zanapsu Dashin Laki Tuyagi, and Tablam Gariore, Garilioris, and Lami Poe Damgayore, just a Lami Poe Damala Dene, and then answer to Chetukuri, just a Zanapsu Changya Tuyagi, Lami Poe Damgayores, just a Zanapsu, and the Kiwachima Dashin Laki Tuyagi, Lami Poe Damgayores, just a Zandap Changya, Lami Poanis, just a Lami Poe Damala Dene, and Dusiniki Tukuri as well.
So then the rest of the line in Tibetan then is the Lama's, it just says, so yeah, it's a little bit mixed. So it continues then with the Lama's spiritual instructions on the transference of consciousness, or what we have here, the Guru's mind transference. So instead of mind transference, this is normally translated as transference of consciousness, and the Lama's spiritual instructions on that. So in the translation you have, there's the word advice. What there isn't in the Tibetan, what we have in the English, is this either and or. Those words aren't there. So it's implying there are two things. There are not two things here. So it's referring to what is the method of this forceful means of enlightenment. It's a Guru's or the Lama's advice or spiritual instructions on transference of consciousness. That is the method in order to achieve, at the time of death, enlightenment or rebirth in a Pure Land or a good rebirth in the higher realms.
So let me pour send number shebadi, Nasung din telepa, Denge, ya, and Dafashin ya, Droya, Ki, Droya down, and Jingazuki, Nasung dingi, din dele, Korine dele, pa, Denge, ya, and the Sanji Sal Droya de Poas, or Poas, and Jin Jil draw de Poas, just I didn't draw, let me pause or edge, let me pour, let me pause it, let me pause it, let me ma this Jewry Sibi Sunshi, Damati, let me pause it, then it, the Jewry essay, some more water, just didn't let me pour, let it, but then Digi, Uzu Japje, and Yawachimangason Madayat, Yasan Yukovang, Gurtuyata, and the Dabation draw to Yada, Yamachua, and Dendritella, and the Gituyadi, the Nikichi says.
This term, transference of consciousness. So this is a forceful propelling of one's consciousness to either a good rebirth, or to a Pure Land, or to Buddhahood. So this is the forceful means of enlightenment, forceful means to attain enlightenment that the verse refers to. That by following the Lama's spiritual instructions, one forcefully transfers one's consciousness. So this word we use of transferring, it doesn't convey this propulsion, but one should understand that this word transfer has a meaning of forcefully propelling one's consciousness to either a good rebirth, a Pure Land, or to the state of Buddhahood itself.
지당 저 포화냐 포위념에서 포화제에서 지당 아주 소소랑한 게 마신이래는 포화제야 포화파전 포화세디 발라미선에 포화제단 담가슈 소소게 장도를 제시 냠는지 소소 곰잡 냠는지 네 소소랑한 게 소소란 남시디야 야 포화지도야 용거래 포화지 용거래 포화제단 양직 양 라마 샨다기 근데 지 곰비 dob기 근데 지게 직신미 샨다지 지 시로제도 시비되네기 미시 힘바이나 디 라메기 지금 곰비 dob기 야 안에 남시야 다신리야 젠바 포화되네 게 지금 거래 제래 포화 지금 되네기 포화제단하지 용거래 포화세야 되라
What is being referred to here in this verse, that these forceful means by which one follows the Lama's spiritual instructions to practice transference of consciousness at the time of death, is that before one dies, one receives spiritual instructions or pith instructions from one's Lama on how to practice the transference of consciousness, and then one trains in this. And and thereby, should one become skilled at the time of death, one can propel one's consciousness, forcefully propel one's consciousness to a good rebirth or a Pure Land or to enlightenment. There's another way that this can be done, and so this is why in the translation we have this or and either, but it's not there in the Tibetan, which is where a Lama can do this for someone when they die. Through the Lama's practice, he propels the consciousness of the deceased person to a Pure Land.
안저 다데디 안저게 싫은 안저 싫어 제대로 qabla 포위게 냠는 전에 안에 직 잔납기 냠는 제고래 해야지 다데 안저 포위 냠는 제다데 가래라네 또뭐 야다 제외 담가게 제사 라메기 포위게 냠는 안저 싫어 제발이야 냠는 제게 또뭐 숨고 또뭐 냠는 제 숨바레스 또뭐 니 냠는 제발에 때네 안에 잔답시 티슈 냠는 슈침부 제발에 때네 아니야 창이 상계다 안 다신을 제발이 두시오래 해야지 숨을 다디셔야지 또뭐이 냠는들에 또뭐이 냠는데 담가디 냠는 제상 이름 바디 또 담가 송을 제사 디 냠는 제에 가서 또뭐 냠는 제들이에서 제사 또뭐이 또뭐 양다 집에 담가기 있으도 또뭐 냠는 두수수 제고래 살람이 송시베 담가지어와 디 담가디 소수기 파고 제 니기 장도를 제시 아니 가지고 또뭐에 냠는 제발에 때네 아니 가서데 야 상제 투야다 상제하고 와 투야다 아니 가서데 다신기 투야게 두스네 또뭐에 더 냠는 제들이 해서 다디데.
What are these spiritual instructions that the Lama will give to their students, and then that the student trains in well, so that at the time of death they can apply? These are the five forces. So this is the five forces are what the Lama will teach or train their students in, and the students will continue to practice. Then at the time of death, in dependence on the quality of their training, they will propel their consciousness to a good rebirth, to a Pure Land, or to Buddhahood itself. So I'll read Then my alternative translation then for these last two lines. Through perfectly applying the Lama's spiritual instructions on the 5 forces of the transference of consciousness, the forceful means to attain enlightenment. So it's referring to just this one method, not to the 2.
저기 동가디 안에 동가디 담가 냠내죠. 동가디 가래라나 동가디 가보 사본이 또 없어요. 근데 몰람이 또 없어요. 펜비 또 없지. 어느 공비 또 없지. 안에 가서 펜비 또 없지. 된 두신이지. 안에 가서 순진비 넘버 숨진비 또 없지. 된 공비 또 없지. 두신가시 봐나 디가 버들 또 와서 디냠내 저거래서.
So what are these 5 forces? There's firstly the force of virtuous karma, the force of prayer. Thirdly, the force of force of intention. Then fourthly, the force of disenchantment. And fifthly, the force of familiarization. So I'll say them again. The first being the force of virtuous karma, the second being the force of prayer, the third being the force of its intention, the fourth being the force of disenchantment, and the fifth being the force of familiarization.
나 가보서는 유튜브 시디 그네치라고 하세요. 당한 저기 지게 benenga jugi da chik never vinara never me da ken war se dang ju da shisare sambege dang ju da chik gynugu desa maranga jogo shisare sambege ang ju la samlo ligruwa benenga ju kengo cha vinara an chik ne na se yo vinara dene samle du an ju kharche orasena 안다 소소기 잘라다 데니기 지게제로 중의로다 데니기 여바 차산 야 권절이야 최부부야다 최부부야 안 견들려 부야 권절로 부야 안마 안지기 샹달레 짐바다야 안도스제 안 양미지경 소소기 부보다 분야다 대설야 지 파제와 디 파제 차산 장모소 오래제래 장모소 오래서 디상모 마초베나 안지게 데네 시로체도 디차산 망구주는 델레 차베게 차베냐가요라 제자단 요거 시사레에서 배samle드네 차산 도스전에 최고부야다 견딜 최고부야 권절의 최고부 안마 짐바다야레 안 멤베게다 소소게 분야다 보다 제가 차산 장모소셔베나 데네 소식이 차섬제 요 말에 아니 권조나 견딜 비비게 샹리 짐바다비게 쇠남제 개와제 사고 제자 단달라 가보 사번이 톱세 되게 개와사바 사바데라 네 가보 쇠남이 톱시 오르다 당한 저기 된지기 다 요거 시사리에 선비게 당한 저기 위 냠는제 철이야 즉 녀만에 즉 대바요 바 검시비 냠는제다 당한 저 델레 림바 먹고용으로 가시미 제림나 조름기 냠는제제 또고 줄레메 대하나 잠니지 장주심 냠네 동방이 또 베셔라 또 차네 안 제림나 조름이 냠는제 되겐 또고 줄레 맞게바이네 데네제 용으로 봐 데네 미용거래 안디 멤비게다 조런 제림나 조런 냠는 맞게바이네 근데 지게 저게 람냠는제 된 계주로 람냠는제베나 람귤에 마토야 되네제 용으로 봐 안디 딜레 교화도 주축치어 중화 삼단은 저게 쯤야 낭배 철래 대바여 바지 소소강 톱두기 개위 수름소야다 개와주야다 차사도신 계주지야다 데네기 강사제 용으로 와 이제 강사라 데네기 강사를 림바 나소 용거래 제가 이내 돈다라 닝보디다 가보 사병이 또 플레드 강사 데네 수디 간에지 임베나 맞다 저거 시사리에 선배 삼레드 맞다 시야기 제리로 마산 가르쳐 거라서는 다 수수기 대시셔반 잘라디 파 최고 부유가다 짐바 땅고야다 소수기 본인의 부고리야 파티와 차상 배진 파장모 수여제 소소 셈 차에 착선 매바 수고를 해제리다
These 5 forces are what the Lama will teach or train the students in, and the student will practice well or train themselves well so that they can apply them at the time of death. And these 5 forces we covered some weeks ago in verse 97. So the first then is the force of virtuous karma, or more literally the force of the white seed. So this refers to the way that a spiritual practitioner will practice when they feel that death is approaching. So such a practitioner could be just any ordinary Buddhist who knows that death is coming and they need to prepare. It may be someone who's just a practitioner of the normal sutra practices, wanting to accumulate virtue so as to prepare for their future lives well. Or it can be for someone who has trained well, already generated bodhicitta, and is engaging in the generation and completion stage practices. Any such practitioner, any committed Buddhist, will engage in this first practice, the force of virtuous karma, when they recognize that death is approaching, either due to their advancing years or a serious illness. And they will utilize this period that remains of their life to make offerings. In particular, all their money and the possessions and so forth, they will utilize to make offerings. They'll make offerings to the three jewels, they'll make offerings to the Sangha, they'll make offerings to their family, and probably also to charities. So in this way, they'll give away completely all their money and possessions, and they'll do so for two primary reasons. One, to accumulate virtue so as to aid spiritual development, but also to prevent an obstacle arising at death of attachment for any remaining possessions. So therefore, to prevent this otherwise likelihood of attachment arising at the time of death, rather the practitioner will utilize the opportunity of their approaching death to create vast stores of merit. So this then is the first of the five forces, the force of virtuous karma, making offerings at the time of as death approaches.
Andi chike sanye le chogo puyare, shen le ane jimba tayare, sosugi da punya da puzul pa chik tu stede, da gewa sago rwa, jini gewa dila, denigi sosugi pa chasan chike zangma su chaksan meba suyene, denigi jene gewa saba dila, da gewa dila gabo sonam mitopsede, gabo sonam siyade gewa dila kukuwarda, deni gewa sabo rese warda.
Can understand then that through offering completely or fully all their money and their possessions to the three jewels, the Sangha, their family, to charities, they will accumulate vast stores of merit. This vast stores of merit is what this first force refers to, the force of virtuous karma, or the karma of the white seed.
Angazuki Bendigo controlia Chopa Puja, and again the Chopa Shania, Jimbata, Denishin the Chopa, controlia Chopa, so at them, Denigi, and the Denigi, Jedan, and so at the Molam Karakawas, and Danga, and the Chidane, and Chikingi, Janju Sem Gom Tuya, Shirochi de Kablia, and Janju Sem Gom Tuba, Shore, Janju Sem the Gom Tuba, Shore, Sada. And the Shine Bardo gave in a Janshusum to come to Barshaw, said, and Gawa Chima in a Gawan Janshusum to come to Barshaw, Shore, said that, so made that Shirochi de Kabla, Janshusum to come to Gidin, Janshusum to come to Barshaw, Saint Begeda, the Nigi Molam Jadi, and then take Garsor, Molam Topsia did.
Then the second of the five forces, that of prayer. So here, making offerings, having made the offerings to the three jewels, the Sangha, one's family and charity, then one comes to dedicate and make prayers. And here, one's prayer is specifically refers to, at the time of my death, may I not forget bodhicitta. May bodhicitta dominate my mind. And not only at the time of death, also into and throughout my time in the intermediate state in the Vado, may bodhicitta may not be forgotten, but fill my mind. And when I take rebirth in my next life, may bodhicitta be dominant in my life and remain so throughout my lives.
대치 매니라 잡아나 개조 가는 데니 제리아 몰람 때문에가 데니기 아니 장수심이 시로지도 갑량에 장수심이 곰제 시도가 시 데니 시월지 데니 곰도 버쇼 몰람자 대시 세디들이.
And in this period between when the practitioner starts to engage in these five forces and when death comes, they will engage in many virtuous activities such as reciting of mani mantras. And here too, with other virtuous activities, they will enact this force of prayer that may now, whilst, for example, reciting mani mantras and meditating on bodhicitta, may I continue throughout what remains of this life, as well as at the time of death, in the intermediate state and in my new birth, have bodhicitta dominant in my mind.
펜베 톱세디와 펜베 톱세디 네니게 몰람 잡데네 시데 아는 하나 저기 가르스모스네 니 이티 시로치도 급이야 잔주스미 공부 이나 선배게 잔주스미 공부지마 샤가 삼마 잔주스미 공부 이나 선배게 삼다에 펜베 톱세오라 지나데 디가는 저기 지당은에다 저기 최초 대화요 되는 얌nen제네 야직 데니가르지마 다야직 델이야 제림나 소름기 냠는 제네 데니게 삼다이가블야 펜베 톱들라 데니기게 데니게 갑라 동반이 고미게 셈비게 삼다 용구로와다 데니게 고미 용구로와 지나데 펜베 톱세리 델야 안에 가사 직 데니게 토네 펜베 톱세다 나도 지단데 데니게 자주 셈지 곰 시로지리 갑량에 자주 셈지 곰베 토네 곰시 곰베 토네 안가 우체바 지기스 자주 셈지 곰 토바 지기야 셈비게 삼다데 펜베 톱시고다.
The third force, that of the force of intention, or also translated as the force of motivation. So here we have the intention being cultivated that when death comes, may I meditate on bodhicitta. And if this practitioner is a practitioner engaged in the generation stage or the completion stage, then the force of intention would be expressed as not only the generation, may I meditate on bodhicitta when death comes, but also on emptiness. So may I meditate on bodhicitta and emptiness at the time of my death. So that's the third force, the force of intention.
Di gombe topse delia anji sunganjila karsungosna di gombe topse de deni shiroji be kablia anji gi jungwashi timrim jungwashi timbi rimba jungwashi sa chu me lung shi se jorwa ga ge nyamne jude jisa sa chule de chume la de me lung number sheba la timse be ge deni gi timbi rimba jungore deni gi timbi rimba dige pa ta sevoya di pan jige 하고와 데니기 용고래 세비기 곰비기 냠뇨 데니기 여바들 곰비도 없어야 데네 숨도와 디자디다디 나게 냠는 돈에 상계비 두스전자들 다 머니티 고고로 제가 데네자 데네질의 팀비 림바시드 데니기 중화시 팀림기 림바 데네 팀비기 림바디 바 데니 규여바 곰디 차바들 곰비도 없어야 데네지 숨도.
So for example, those who are engaged in actual practice of Tantra, for them, the force of intention would be expressed as, when I die, may I recognize the signs of dissolution and utilize the recognition of the signs of dissolution to meditate on emptiness at the time of death.
곰베 돌하르 지다디 디직세 난 곰베 돕시이로아 안제자데 땅이 곰베 돕시이다 곰베 돕세디 다리디 곰베 돕세 팀림지 중화시 팀림기 림바 다데 규여바 제바 곰바디 곰베 돕지기마 송나지디마 난 직딜랑은 저기 디레라 장주셈 곰바디 장주셈 곰이야디레 다게디 인간적이 자주심 고미야디 곰베 톱시오래. 대순지메도 시기로 와 대신에 대순지메도 된다 시기로 와 되다. Chöpa di shedu kabla Chöpa dhungurwa. Dadi Chöpa dambo nge dadi gombe top di shigurwa. Sunji me top shini shigurwa. Da Chöpa kar chagin hagu. Gombe top shigurwa. Jizang gombe top se dila sungtang rochi mida kar ni yungure se. Jigdi kar sine 중화시 팀림지 림바디 파 냠뇽 도스네 하고와 제도 공배 돕세 되네 지레 송나지 연구를 해제 안에 다데디 지나 안에 자슈sem 공부하들라 공배 돕세 되세 네 공배 돕시고를
So just to correct myself, so I said that the previous segment was on the force of intention, rather that was actually the force of meditation. So I'll say meditation, force of meditation. So I'll just repeat it again. The force of meditation is that at the time of death, may I meditate on bodhicitta, or if one is a practitioner of Tantra, may I recognize the 8 stages of dissolution at the time of death, and meditate on those. So, and in this way, meditate on emptiness. So in either of those, either the force of meditation is expressed as the determination, the time of death, may I meditate on bodhicitta, or may I meditate on emptiness through recognizing the signs of dissolution at death.
나도 공부에 없어야 되라 동반이 공부하듯이 지금마다 공부에 없어야 돼 아주 장수심 공부해야 돼 장수심 공부 야는 맛이 춘제들이야 장수심까지 공부하디 다 공부해봤는 데는 공부에 없어야 돼 다들 해야 되지 오늘 장수심 공부하들라 그러지 그 중화시 팀림이 림바 주사 줄래도 주매래 루남신 넘버션에 되네기 팀림 미림바 그 되네게 삼다 규여제 규여 야고 차와대 공부도 없어야 돼. 아니 공부도 없더라. 송담이죠. 이승우도 해야 돼.
Again, is just correcting me. No reference there to emptiness. So here, in the force of meditation, one is setting the force that at the time of death, may I meditate on bodhicitta or meditate on the stages of dissolution.
number sunjimi top seore. number sunjimi top labna tanga karsone divashaba dige seore. divashaba de seore. Jasada juge number sunjimi top sedai machinialia no ji sosuge ya controlia chewa puedim jige karsore divashade bene jige 이게로 사데 디바다 샤야나다 안지 동화 샤바 데네게 되는제 디바샤야나다 데네게 초하로 제 당주기 렌제 디바샤야나 데네게 지 냠렌제 데라 디바샤바데라 넘버 순진메 톱세데 수인 가르치어서는 아주기 디바샤바 디바디 파 메바서야데 파 샤바데라 순진바 데네게 디바샤게 순진메 톱세데다 데네게 토네가 저기 이게 된 바이나 이게 사제 디바샤바이나다 데네게다 저게 동화샤바다 데네게 토네 되지 이 디바샤바이나다 데네 아직 초가 된지 나중글렌제 다죽랭기도 안 되게 하자. 예, 이니 그디나 어디 다죽랭제 안에서는 주도시네. 안에 제베나 디바샤바 차고 되게 온도시네. 디바 제 딘냠는 제바들라 근데 넘버 순지면 돕시 그래야지.
The next one then will be the force of, I think I called it disenchantment earlier, or more commonly called the force of regret. So this would refer to, at the time of death, may I confess past non-virtues and engage in purification practice. So the force of regret or the force of disenchantment would be to confess past non-virtue and then engage in purification practices, perhaps reciting Panchasattva's 100-syllable mantra, or perhaps engaging in, once a practitioner of Tantra, the self-generation, a practice such as self-initiation. The practice of self-initiation at the time of death.
Then number sunjime top said, and Jigla number sunjime top said, Diga so Tombani, Koada, and then Koada, and Deba Nyande said, China, Chokandisa, Rango when you do as a Kaya met, say, and Tombani comedy, and number sunjime top said, oh dear. 디자인에 순진배 톱제 삼단하들 리니시고도와 동반이 검제 검나 지직 검바에데 제 넘버 순진배 톱 가르스네 아주 코르 동알레다 녀모바게 뒤바디게 차사 덴신 마릭 바들레 티니 키워드 제사 덴신 마릭 바디 검메바서 녀보디 아니 가서 동반이 두로도 검발레 되네 아니 고고자 동반이 두로 검메디 넘버 순진배 톱세디 안 되네시 송거래.
Continuing with the force of regret or disenchantment, so here at the time of death, one commits to confessing past non-virtue and then engaging in purification practice. So I mentioned one branch of purification practice, perhaps reciting the Vajrasattva 100-syllable mantra or engaging in a self-initiation. Another would be to a second branch of the force of regret would be to meditate on emptiness. And the purpose or the reason for meditating on emptiness within the context of the force of regret is that all the suffering in samsara comes about in dependence on karma that has been accumulated under the influence of, in particular, as the very root, the ignorance of self-grasping. So therefore, it will be purified through meditating on the wisdom realizing emptiness. So here in the force of regret, the second alternative would be to meditate on emptiness.
Denigi jene ane dusjene komgore se tumga komnadi dire se ngadi dire se chesanda delia gas tumga komnadi dire se dali she dire se ordi chesanda denes komgore se tumga komnadi dire se dire se 다디 시교 디진일 시교 등에 양자라고 랍교 지고 디레스 해야지 해야 돼. 펜베도 대시에서 되네. 지위 갑리야 장슈섬 곰투바 지긴 선배 삼당고라서 펜베도 들어와 돼. 곰베도 장슈섬 곰이야 시에 말해. 곰베도 리그니시서 장슈섬 곰이야 직제 직대 중화시 팀림들 삼등 내바게 직제리 디셰사에 말해. 이 곰베도 그래지 딩이디. 펜베도 세디 곰기 인 삼바주와 펜베 곰고 말와. 또 곰베도 전시 모수 곰바도 곰베도 그러와. 지금 곰기 삼바도 곰바니디 가가라와. 칼라 사긴 삼바디 사야 말와. 지나디 사긴 삼바디 사야로 시신데 사와디 모사와. 지나 전시스 곰기 인야 삼베 곰투바 시외 내가 전시스 곰기 인 다마시외 내가 전시스 곰기 인 삼베 삼로 땅아디 펜바 땅아와. 마도 곰 모수 곰거다. 모수라 전시스 곰바디다 곰베도 세우와.
So just ask Genla to clarify the difference between two of them, the force of intention and the force of prayer. Because both have been taught, but I didn't get the difference. So the force of intention is, at the time of death, or with the intention, the determination to meditate on bodhicitta. So that's the force of intention. Then the force of meditation is the actual meditation on bodhicitta, or the 8 stages of dissolution. So again, the force of intention is the intention, the determination to meditate, and then the force of meditation is meditating. So they therefore are quite similar. And in this way, then the 5 forces are that of virtuous karma, prayer, meditation, intention, and regret have been mentioned.
곰비 톱라도 모소 곰바디 코라치 고고로와 디네 펜바당알도 곰예게 온로로 싫어 녀도 곰기인 선비게 삼다디는 곰고로와 지나 곰기인 선비 삼다디 데네치로 곰투바 지기인 선비 삼다디 펜베 톱시다도 신이 모소 곰유로와 안 데네게 삼단 제리아 모소 곰바디라 곰베 톱시고로와.
So again, the force of intention is the intention to engage in the particular meditation, and the force of meditation is engaging in that meditation. So that's the difference between the two.
Isna denigi 장슈 셈 공기 인사 삼다 동반이 공기 인사배 삼다에도 편배 dob차기로와 지사 되네자 땅아주 대시 이 라소한테 깨림나 소름기 냠는 제되겐 한 똑바길에 깨마도베네 냠는 제등에 되게 잠니제 장슈 셈 동반이 또배기 로르 깨사제 내 깨림 조르 냠는 제제 한 똑바기 마토바제 아니 시로치들가라 가르치고래서는 동반 냠는 제고래세 다 동반 냠는 제베드네 한 상자고 투바 제고를 해세. 나 대솔이야 동의 냠는 집에 두는 상자 투비기 고가 브레고래. 그래서 고 냠는 지고 지어와 그래서는 디카보스는 이제 사이드디시아 집받체 펜베도 없어야 돼. 내게 한 시루치 디카블이야 자주 셈도 동반 요금 투바 지긴 셈비고 펜받아야 돼. 내게 펜받아 세회절이야 다시 디마시 paralela 동반 요금이야 자주 셈 kom이야 되지. kom체 아니 곰제 안마 팀림되게 오다 되네되네 팀고르다 되네 팀고르 팀림되게 곰제 냠녀사 되네마 대시르디 갑라 동반이 삼다 동반이 곰제 되네 팀림이 마신 마산지도 되네 가사 그지 녀마슈바나신 난저그 다 가소레 되네 팀림데 마레데 나와 쳬바 쳬드미니 안지게 세멘 쳬디 파 동반이 셈 아주 육심 참어디게 어디 갑라 안 동반이 또투 되네 동방에 또 투면도 동방에 또 하는데 뒤에 한 다디 동방에 또 하는데 되네 파 가로디 바도기게 잡라 아니 마다비 귤이 두고 오래 사지 그신야마디 쉬서데 어디 되네게 냠는 제발라 되네디 두고 오래 제자 다디 뭐 예림나 조름이 냠는 제디겐 제디기라 되네스 두야요 두고 오래 제
From this explanation, then one sees that the 5 forces are practiced by someone who is yet to attain a path. And it's through practicing these 5 forces, which are one has received spiritual instruction on from one's Lama, that one can actually attain a path and thereby transform the rebirth that one will achieve. So here, one will have been skilled in meditation on love and compassion, bodhicitta, perhaps the wisdom realizing emptiness. And then at the time, as death is approaching, one will engage in the practice of the force of virtuous karma by creating merit, and not only creating vast stores of merit, but preventing the danger of attachment arising at the time of death. And one will have generated the force of prayer that at the time of death and beyond, may I meditate on these practices, and the strong intention then for that to come about. And then when death comes, with nearing, one will engage in the process of also regret and purification, and then in that of the force of meditation, where one will meditate on either love, compassion, and bodhicitta, or perhaps meditate on the 8 stages of dissolution. So we spoke not necessarily about the 8 stages last week, but we did mention the culmination that of if someone is engaging in those 8 stages, they will come to recognize the arisal of the subtlest of minds. And that is the mind that is utilized in highest yoga tantra to realize emptiness. So therefore, someone who has not generated a path can train in these 8 stages of dissolution, and then at the time of death recognize the arisal or the appearance of the subtlest mind and use that to realize emptiness. And if they are able to do so, they will be able to attain the either progress very successfully or attain the 3 kayas.
다디네기 예림나 소름 냠는 지간슬에 대 용마제 다디 하는 쪽에 대 메나 다디 상제위 또 동반이 또 세위 제라 니기파 동방이 두불로디 파 예로도 가르치르스는 마다비 귤리세도 원 지기리에스마 마다비 규묘구도 원도 지기리에스 데네 텐델야 상야 두고 오래제래.
So just to clear, so this practitioner, if they are able to realize emptiness with the subtle mind, they will then attain the impure illusory body. And in this way, they will be able to then rapidly advance to enlightenment.
다디 저기 게림나 조름 냠는 제제네 데네게 시로제다 데네게 가스마니게 다데 류윙 데네게 제 세메나 지게 귤이 좀 마트가 또바 데네게 마트엔디길라 데네게 냠는 제도가 잔답 동과에 냠는 제발로 토네 안도시네 제델이야 아니 귤이 온도지 두고래 해야지 데네게 제 두고서 다디 게림나 조름 냠는 예팅 가사래 당한지 데네게 냠는 메칸솔라 당아 주로부로 신나다 게시쇼데 가르람나 당아 주게 게시쇼데 당보 가보서도 서버니 톱세 당보 셰바나지 당아 주게 당보 한소수게 규제라데 데니슨 바파 한짐바 당와데 제데 개와서 디게주사 데네 안아 주게 주르니 암몰람 자야데 아니 지게 시위에 가서 아니 자주심 공부도 용화쇼 세다 아니 세랍도 랑게 라마디게 지 제수 진투버쇼 세비 몰람 자야다 아니 지 안개와 치마이나 자주심 냠는 제도 얘기電상보 용화쇼 세비 몰람 자야디다 몰람이 돕차 차고로와 다 펜베 돕세데 숨바디 다 데니기게 시위 갑리야 자주심도 공부도지야 선비게 펜바다들이 제자네 밀라마 랑게 라마 제지도 곰투바지야 상지기 곰투바지기 세베당은 자주셈 곰투바지야 선비 펜바다에 디 곰투바지기 선비 삼로데 펜바다와데 차거로와
Someone who is a practitioner of Tantra, they will be able to utilize this meditation of the dissolution of the stages at death to come to attain those 6 stages of the completion stage, the 6 levels of the completion stage. So we spoke briefly last week about the first 3, physical isolation, verbal isolation, and mental isolation, which is the process by which the most subtle mind is come to be recognized, and when that is recognized at the time of death, then that mind of clear light leads to the attainment of the impure illusory body. So this is something that actual practitioners of Tantra can engage in at the time of death. But for us, the way we train in these 5 forces is firstly that of the force of virtuous karma, creating vast stores of merit. Secondly, the power of prayer, that's this long-term intention that at the time of death, bodhicitta dominant in my mind, and in the intermediate state and into my next rebirth. And the intention, the power of intention, to meditate on bodhicitta at the time of death, or perhaps to recall our Lama, have him first and foremost in our mind, or perhaps Buddha Shakyamuni. So we can utilize the practitioners such as ourselves, can utilize the 5 forces in this way.
데네 아주게 담마시 바라델이야 수수랑하게 semja 탐제유도는 안에산 요거번 토벌쇼 sembe 삼로데 야네 야도 가세 땅도베네 자슈심 당하주 자슈심 고소 게메나야 데네게 삼로데 야네 야도 땅바이네 안주 자슈심 공바세 제거로 제가 데네게 공미야디 당원에 야네 야도 삼다데 컴퓨터스 디 야네 야도 공바데다 공바인사다 디 공바야데라 컴퓨터스 제거로
The force of meditation, this is something that hopefully you are engaging in, and certainly you should from now, because here one can be meditating on bodhicitta, engaging in these meditations coming to the point of, in the meditation, for the sake of suffering mother sentient beings, I will attain enlightenment. In this way, we're utilizing the period of whatever may remain between now and our death to meditate on bodhicitta.
데네 자디니게 전주심 데심데 사이고바 토벌쇼 sembe 전주심 곰 데네게 전주심디 데네 군로 토네 당아 저기 다 소소라랑기 냐마 디버사샤바이네라 Rangshen, the Simja Tamje Randa, Shen Simja Tamji, Dipati, Shagin, Samje, and the Juk Sosaranagida, Dipa Shagin, Din Zanang, Concholia Soa Tapche, Jia, Chiki Conchola Chopa, and Haji, Ikaru, Tumbaina, Dunje, but Tumbaina, the Nigga Jabina, and the many Jambaina, then Dunga Shapata, the Nigga Chad, the Nishabina, that did. 차다 되네데 갈래 하고로 와다 언제 just 강톡톡이 당한테 도시네 이게로 쌓아다 되네셔야지 직디바 순지be 돕셔야 최고래.
And likewise, not only the force of meditation, but the force of regret is something we can and should be engaging in now, which is to engage in purification practice, to confess, to recall past misdeeds that one has done, confess, make the commitment not to do them again, and then engage in purification practices, whether making offerings to the 3 jewels, or reciting the Vajrasattva mantra, as many as one can, meditating on emptiness, and so forth, all in accordance with one's own abilities. So this too is another force that we are able to engage in now, in accordance with our capacity.
And that Denige some that mind that Denige Sosuke Tempa Manyam Paradiliash, that she says some Denige, some of the Liad, Semja Sosuke Lama, Sanji, Tehenji, or Sanji, Tenji, Sanji, Denige, Sanji, and their Sanji, Sanji, that's some jet Tamji Dunangi, Sanjo go on top of show, some big some Janju Simrang, some Jangayama, some Dira, some Daje, to Jene, the Ucheva. Uche somvena uche ge dinima jik tim do trovena da dia denigi ni du kombe topse dilia dinyel ya komya ngudu apene molam ja da ka bosanam topna ne pembe toptam chane janjusim yane no komya de kombe topche gore ane dini tiba shaba nyembe sunji be topche gore and dini ya shiro jidu kabla uchega lama de pashita 다시 우도 선배 삼다 레어도 소수기 파 레어도 안 소수기 심자 탐지도 산요고바 산지기 셈려야 제제 심자 탐지기도 산요고바 진행에 토벌쇼 선배 삼는 다가라 당시 잡아나 on고도 진에 봐 근데 마 최선바이나 디 곰비내야 돼 디야 곰비 톱샤고 디 예체쇼를 차고래 디가 저때 마시다 시설에 선배 삼는 거보다 심자는 산요고바 토벌쇼 선배 삼는 두 진에 삼는 당신병 안에 아니 그 우체선 바이나 되니게와 치마들이야 아니 지게 저기 하나 탈게야 하나 밀게야 하나 다신게야기 아니 되지 용고래 세대 나선게요 말다 되네.
One engages with a sustained meditation practice, meditating on bodhicitta, engaging also in purification practice, then when we're becoming aware that yes, I can see that my death is approaching, either through old age or through illness or another reason, because of the strength of our habituation through these meditations, our mind will naturally turn to bodhicitta, knowing that our death is coming, and in dependence on our daily meditation practice, we will naturally think to ourselves, may I make the most of this opportunity that is in front of me now. And here, one will generate many of these forces, the determination that when death comes, to hold bodhicitta in mind, and to cultivate it ever further. And this then will come with engaging in, so this will be the force of prayer and the force of intention. And then one can engage in the force of regret for past misdeeds, meditate and purify, and then meditate on bodhicitta, the force of meditation, for the sake of all sentient beings. May I continue my spiritual development, become a Buddha as quickly as possible to free them from suffering. In this way, one engages in the meditation on bodhicitta, the force of meditation. So this way, through having developed the force of our daily meditation practice, we can practice the 5 forces at the time of death, and this will perhaps lead to rebirth in the Pure Land or enlightenment, but certainly will, at the very least, close the door to the possibility of rebirth in the lower realms, and thereby one will attain a good rebirth in the happy migrations. And this is all within our capacity to practice.
Denigi Gablia and Janso Tayage Cavalores or the Carson Denigi that called Shiroji the Amcho to just Amcho Kodu Gabla, Udical Tam de Takan, Janjusem Shanda, Janjusem Comsho, Saji, Dusena, and Lavaina, and called Janso Teja, and Janjusem Comia Cavangures. And then Amcho Gumevena and Mikte Umbo Mahab Paradelia, not to be good over that the nigger color Dunipa to Stembaina. And Korongi, Namsa Tembu good party or the Delia, Devajada, and Dishina, and the San Yokomoto speech, the nature Sem Komiagi, Jan Sete, the Ningures, the nature wide, and Kachimborashi, Mado, and the Paradela, Juge, or that, Chiki, Kuchala, Gorki, Shame, said that, dig up the Negita, and Chiga, and Chigi, Kazakapilla, Muyada, the Naja, Ungurua, on the Jigi. Jena and Kolia, Denigi, Givi Che, Montuya, Barcia Chagores, the Nezanangi, Denigi, Gobia, Chume, the Koran, Yamnajitu, then some Natu in the day, down to the Janso Naidu, and it was Janjusem Kadat, Jona Janjusem Gomsho said that Duslata, and the Koran Miktonsia, Tembu Guru, and the Negipa, and the Koran and the Mun Devages, Lama Ruchin, this part Miktuela, Korantosa Dusjevena, and the Koran Yam.
This verse then contains for us advice on how to die well. If we have trained well between now and when our death does come, trained in meditating on bodhicitta and confession, purification, then when our death is near and our sense powers are starting to dissolve, we'll hopefully have a companion with us, and they then can guide us in at the time of death. So the way this works is for a practitioner of our capacity who has meditated in this life, their companion will whisper in their ear, "Death is coming. Now is the time to recall bodhicitta." Then even in our weakened state, that will be enough to remind us, because of our habituation to meditating on bodhicitta, our strong determination we've generated to die well, just this gentle word in our ear will be enough for us then to turn our mind back once again to the purpose of this life, which is to be of great benefit to others. And thereby we'll meditate on bodhicitta. Or alternatively, our companion will show to us a Buddha image or an image of our Lama. And then again, in dependence on our training, on the meditation we've been engaging in over an extensive period, that will be sufficient to turn our mind to bodhicitta, and we will be able to die with bodhicitta dominant in our heart, just like we've set as an intention. Moreover, we would have by this point already practiced that the first of the forces, that of gathering virtue, in other words, making offerings, so we won't be under the danger of being attached to our possessions, and we will thereby be able to pass from this life with a lighter mind and our mind on bodhicitta. So thereby, by training now in these five forces, we can be confident that we will die well in this life.
당어 저기 나 장주심 검제 아니 바 지시송배나다 되게 아니 지 장주심 검모되네 코스네 라마 소소 라미기 제수 템비게스 라마키에서 라마디 제수 제한시 시배나다 되게도 지나가실래 도시는 개위 셈지 온도 규르시에 도시네다 디간에 시송바이나 아주 개와치망아 솔기 말레스 아니 덴돌기 루그레시레 지사다 데니게 잔슈스ም 곰뱅 안에 도시는 시송바나 개와치마이네야 디기 아니 다데 잔슈스ም 곰비기 땡기 개와치마디레 덴데라이나 덴돌기 투야다 덴돌기에 덴데라야 한지게 전주심 곰비게 바샤 세진이야 전주심 곰야리아 냠nen지야리아 아니 지로파 세진 전주심 곰 딘데리아 전주심 냠nen제도가 용고레스 데니 제베나 되고 데니 세지리아 데네 곰니 니발든 준 두수야리아 천제 아니 저 저게 산조고바 토에 다냐냐 주고레스 그래서 데니 인자 진다 dom거기 토네 넘윤네다 지단에 저 희승이마 야 가서 Lama Chöpa Dorna Sangan Nawa Jishyayang Chögo Nyingbo Tobi Nyamlenji Janshusim Nyujongba Jingyulo Sadi Chesanganzo Kewa Karachebe Topngi Tone Janshusim Nyamlen Cheala Bezu Chegure Sadi Kisingi Madine Shurwa Chesan Diyinza Diso Labtan Sungtan Jigbare Gabo Sodabe Sabayin Top Seadan Pembe Top Seadan Gombe Top Seadan Number Sumjimbe Top Seadan Dirwa Chesan Di Gabo Sunum Top Sadi Dadi Dingan Jugile Shiga Lamadilla Samdashi Di Kisinimata Chita Numyun Anzu Gawa Yamna Jala Janshu Simkiege Tonlaya Gavi Jawa and Lama Jig Sunam Saya de la Gabo Sunum Top Sure Zidai Pembe Top Sading Janshu Sim the Yamlan Jetuba Chicken Gomba Chicken Sebege Janshu Sim Natongba Tobe Sherati Dinibo the Yamlan Machan Tabang and Yamlan Jetuba Chicken Sebege Pemba de la and the Pembe Top Sura 나 말람 또 세야디 안저 계절 줍네 능에 자주 셈나 동방이 또 비시라 냠네 야부치 투벌쇼 선배게 되니게 말람 되었네 아니 말람이 또 시거로 되네 아니 그래서 능원에랑 저 계절 가르주비네 셈제 탐적이 된다 잠니제 삼다 되네 삼다능에 셈제 탐적이 산주고 봐 투벌쇼 선배 삼다 셈제 탐이 산주고 봐 투비 치도 인선비게다 계절 가르주비네 공배 뜻이 고거래 내내 셈제 남지 최담제 Ranshin Nama, Rangamon Tuba, Yomare, some town and Geshe Thubten compared to the legal watches a compared to Bre, and the Ninbuk Gasore, Sunjim Top Sadi, Nyomo, Nimbo, Nobanyo combat, the Chagua, Nobanyo combat, Gandamjini, as you get Dinyam Chetan by Dusuru, this will get him Chagua. That did it took my setting on the Shihala mother to Hoshisares and some of the Tigers to some Tanta the Shigorwa. Didn't you do a Sikavadua?
If one has practiced well, then merely seeing an image of one's Lama at the time of death will be sufficient for powerful virtuous minds to arise within oneself. And the great importance of dying with virtuous minds is that they close the door to the lower realms and ensure rebirth in the higher realms. And moreover, if merely seeing the face of one's Lama also leads to the generation of bodhicitta in our mind, then we'll be born in not only in the higher realms, but with strong virtuous imprints. And in this way, we will have a mind inclined, or personality inclined to virtue. We'll seek out paths of virtue, seek out the Dharma, and in this way we'll continue to nurture these imprints of bodhicitta lifetime to lifetime. And this is how ordinary practitioners such as ourselves progress towards Buddhahood through the five forces. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the class, these came up in verse 97, which was, please bless me to transform whatever appearances may arise, good or bad, into a path ever enhancing the two bodhicittas, through the practice of the five forces, quintessence of the entire Dharma, and attune myself solely to the bliss of the mind. So the five forces are the same, they are practiced slightly differently, because how it's presented there is how one would normally practice them in the context of bodhicitta. The way they've been presented tonight, same five forces, but the emphasis is on preparing for death. So one can practice them in either way because they serve a similar purpose. One needs to accumulate virtue, one needs to generate the intention to meditate on bodhicitta and on emptiness. One needs to generate regret, and there may well include further meditation on emptiness. And then the actual power of meditation will be on bodhicitta and possibly emptiness too. So in this way, one can practice the 5 forces both now as part of one's training in bodhicitta, as mentioned in the commentary to verse 97, or in our preparation for practicing the 5 forces at the time of death. The verse ends with what we have in the first line: please bless me to reach a pure land. Or better than reach, more accurate would be to progress to a pure land. So here we are asking our Lama for blessings or inspiration that our training in the 5 forces go well, our training be in accordance with his spiritual instructions, so that we utilize what remains of this life well, and in particular at the time of death, that we progress to Buddhahood or to a pure land, or at the least a good rebirth. So then, thank you. We'll end there for tonight. But can I do that? Camera?
Just a question about transference of consciousness. There's the power practice. Is this similar? Is there an overlap here with the power practice? And is power practice recommended for practitioners of death?
Is there an overlap between what was explained here tonight and the practice of Puja, or transference of consciousness? And is that practice recommended at the time of death?
Yeah, is that something we should focus on?
Is it recommended for someone such as ourselves at the time of death to focus on? Yeah.
Jisa ngi Puja se de jinga zo kari kyabar yorasan Puja se de Puja damga shu je sosu jangdur je Puja jang je sosu gi Puja jaya yore se je ndi mimbe lama shanda gi din je ne nyamlen je je ne lami gi shanda ji gi mi shanda ji le Puja jaya de yung go res dade se de nga zo rang top ngi thone Puja je ta sung go res de ro da kyabar dirwa.
So the word, just before I come to Genla's answer, so the word you're using, Puja, is the word that's translated here in English as transference of consciousness, or in the verse before you as mind transference. So this verse is specifically talking about practicing now so as to prepare for the time of death in Puja. And there are different practices of Puja or transference of consciousness, and one receives that from one's teacher, and these are the spiritual instructions. And of the different techniques, one of them is that of the 5 forces that this verse presents. So here, a practice of transference of consciousness, or Puja, has been presented, how to train in it, and how to train in it from now.
Okay.
So as to prepare for the time of death.
Puja se de donda karasane jala jik de yobadi shanda jile shasha de Puja se de ngana zuge number sheba de da ngana zugarasane le da nyom ko wigin ko wala ne duki de ni le da nyom dunga nyo de kaplin de ro de number sheba de chu tuen je de ni ge kanga message ya de tang wa de Puja se di se wo di tang wa se wo di tang na de la gan se yo re ne de ni 포와 냠 땅탕이 냠는 제기 림바로지 소수게 당마슈 소수게 장도를 제제 아니 소수디 장도를 제네란 게 포와 제베 인지 미지 시로지도가 빈고고 말다가 되네야지네 대대디금에 샹다 두근스비 포와 장투베네 소수게 남시 포제네 야 다신려 조투고래 줘야 용고래 세디 인지 미지 시로에 갑대 인고예요 말에 다 나중에 되네기 소수게 제마투바제 소수게 냠는 매베게 되네 라마 샹다게 되네 안 포와두신 남시데 미망한솔 마다제야 다실야 땅투바 용고래세디 니 시타지 조사르바 시디 되는 쇼레세 다든 안주 갑로세디 나중에 람 냠는제 또바규레 뭐게 마투바이나 되네기 시디 갑라 가르제고래에서는 또가 삼다제 되네 아주 넘버 셰바데 나송이 때는 마던 바제 나는 다신다 한 된줄이야 계토가 지고를 해서지 다디가 비셔야 되리에 제자디 대지셔야 등이 제자 소수고 포와 냠는 제 장도 저저 힉세 장요르디 장요르고 라메 담가 지고 담가 되는 딘디기 힉세네 바 남시 되네야 포 대포 되네 대포 되네 야 대화전 다진디 삼다나 중고래 대 힉세디 디나리 힉세디 기시고 말에 대 동가디 시고로 와다
So there are different practices for the transference of consciousness. And this word then, transference, as it implies, it means moving something from here to there, transferring something from here to there. So in the context of the Puja training, or to stay with the English, the transference of consciousness, it's referring to transferring the consciousness from our current state where we are under the control of our afflictions and karma, to a state freed of that, to the Pure Land or Buddhahood. So this is the meaning behind this, using the word transference. So, because whilst in English we say transference of consciousness, the Tibetan just is transference. Puja is just transference. So there are different methods, one perhaps being what you have in mind, where one moves the consciousness up the central channel and eventually out the crown of the head, utilizing the syllable hik and practicing in that way. What is presented here in the verse is another practice of transference of consciousness, and that is of the 5 forces, which is something that one doesn't only practice at death, but prepares in the period between when one receives these spiritual instructions until one's death, and then also practices them.
So there's no conflict in doing the two together.
The two being the one with the syllable hik, yeah, this one, and this one. No fault, the more the merrier. Okay? Okay. Then thank you very much.